This is Dr. S. the Legend. He's back. Today's conversation is why Justice Amy Barrett should never have been appointed to the Supreme Court. Now, she gave the impression of being a conservative, but her voting record says otherwise. For the record, I would never have chosen her for a member of the Supreme Court. President Trump made a big mistake with her appointment. So, let me give you the history of her appointment. So what happened was, on September 18th, 2020, Justice Ginsburg passed away, I think it was pretty suddenly. And Donald Trump had to appoint somebody very quickly. So he appointed Justice Barrett. She was confirmed by the Senate on October 27th, 2020 by a vote of 52 to 48. This only was a 5-week process. This was a rush job. Anytime you do a rush job, you're going to make mistakes. By the way, she was recommended by Senator McConnell and Vice President Pence. She's from Indiana, and so is Pence. Safe to say, President Trump doesn't have a whole lot to do with Pence or McConnell these days. So a number of mistakes were made. And again, reiterating, mistake number one, this was a rush job because the election was coming up in November and the Republicans were afraid of losing the Senate. When you rush things, mistakes are made. President Trump did not have all the background information on Justice Barrett. This was a big mistake. Mistake number two. Trump said he would pick a woman for the opening on the Supreme Court. Bad idea. You are eliminating all men or 50% of the qualified people. So Justice Barrett was a diversity pick. Bad idea that again. I mean, maybe she was qualified, maybe she wasn't. I don't think she was qualified. Mistake number three. This is the biggest of all the mistakes. This is the elephant in the room. She was an academic for 15 years. She taught at the university level for 15 years. She taught at Notre Dame Law School, where, by the way, she also graduated. Now, from personal experience, academics do not live in the real world. I'll repeat that. They don't live in the real world. They live in the world of ideas, philosophy, abstraction. I don't care if you're a liberal, a conservative, or a libertarian, but if you're in academia, you do not live in the real world. I would never have chosen her for this reason. But I had experience in academia. President Trump did not. Now, I have experience in that area. I'll explain more later. So, moving on. The background of Justice Barrett. She graduated Notre Dame University in 1997, the law school. And she was a law clerk for 2 years for judges. Then she practiced law for 3 years. I don't know if she ever did a single trial. Then from 2002 to 2017, again, she taught at Notre Dame Law School. 15 years in academia. And then in 2017 through 2020, she was a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit. This is an appeals court at the federal level. This is not a trial court. Again, I'm not sure if she's had any trial experience. And again, 15 years, and I'll repeat this a lot, 15 years in academia, not in the real world. Let me describe academia for you from the inside. I taught at 2 universities each for about 12 years, while also practicing law. All university teaching positions, whether they are part-time or full-time, they're all part-time. Sorry if I insult academics. I'm sure there are some good ones out there. But this is the way things roll. So, you are not working on a full-time 40-hour-a-week schedule. You're not even working 20 hours a week. Well, you might think you're working. And it's my experience that this occurs in most universities. There are 2 semesters in universities in a year, each 15 weeks, and usually 1 week of finals. That's 32 weeks. That means you're only working 32 or 52 weeks a year. That means you're off 20 weeks. That's 4 2/3 months of free time. Now what about teaching? If you're a full-time teacher or a professor, which really is part-time, at the most you're doing 8 hours of class time a week. Okay, that's not a day, that's a week. Plus a couple of hours of office time to meet your students. Now I did this for many years. On a rare occasion, a student would come and actually meet with me. Most of the time, I just sat there because students like to communicate with their professors by email. They never like to come in person. So who knows if students ever show up. Plus, if you're a full-time professor, you really don't have anyone to report to. It's not like you sign in and sign out like a regular job. You teach your classes, and you have your office hours, and the rest of it is your own free time. Another dirty little secret, and this I assume is at most universities. It was both the universities I taught at. So you had a choice. And I was part-time, and I was also full-time. It varied. You had a choice of either teaching Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or Tuesday and Thursday. Now I chose Monday, Wednesday, and Friday since very few of the professors wanted to teach Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They preferred Tuesday and Thursday schedules so that they could have a 4-day weekend and also be off. They were only working 2 days a week. Again, this is really a part-time job. Even if it's considered full-time, it pays really well. So Justice Barrett was quote-unquote a full-time professor, but gave her a lot of free time. What did they do in their free time? All those months and hours and weeks? I don't know. Maybe research, maybe travel, maybe they get grants and make more money. It's a great job if you can get it. So that was the biggest mistake. Mistake number 4, and this is somewhat controversial on my part. I have no animus against Justice Barrett. She attended Notre Dame Catholic University, taught there. By the way, I taught at a Catholic university also. But here's the weird part. She and her parents were lifelong members of a group called the People of Praise, not in any way affiliated with the Catholic Church. It's described as an ecumenical, charismatic renewal movement. I have no idea what that means. It seems like cult-like to me. At one time they called their women members handmaidens. Now, we have the First Amendment, freedom of religion, fine. You want to be a member of one of these groups, a cult or whatever, religion, fine. But on the Supreme Court, where they're going to hear cases concerning religion and other matters, I don't think that's a good idea. Again, I just got the feeling that this is some sort of cult-like group. Another mistake, I characterize these as mistakes 5 and 6 together. Justice Barrett has 7 children. Now, this is okay for most people or jobs to have 7 children. Nowadays, it's kind of unusual to have 7 children. But to have 7 children and also be on the Supreme Court which is a demanding job, who's raising her children? This is a hard job. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. I had 2 brothers. This was a full-time job for her. Imagine if there were 7 boys. I don't know how my mom would have done it. Hadn't been on the Supreme Court. How's that possible? Now this is really coincidental because while I'm recording this today, yesterday, Justice Barrett testified before Congress with Justice Kagan. I think she just had her there for moral support. And they were asking for millions and millions of dollars more for security at the Supreme Court. And Justice Barrett reveals that during the Dobbs decision, I'll talk about that in a minute, for a significant period of time, she had to wear a bulletproof vest. And she had to explain this to her children. No, I can't imagine that. Now let me explain what took place, if some of you may have forgotten. The Dobbs case concerned abortion and the Roe v. Wade case. I'm not going to go into all the facts. Just to say that someone or other at the Supreme Court, we don't know who, we still don't know who, released a draft version of the final opinion of the Supreme Court that changed the Roe v. Wade decision. And as a result, there were mass demonstrations at the justices' homes, particularly those justices who were going to overrule the Roe v. Wade decision on abortion. That would include Justice Barrett. So they were all targets of these demonstrators. And it's my opinion that they also targeted Justice Barrett's children, her personally, children's schools, as well as the other justices. These demonstrations went on for probably several months. Once they released the regular decision, there were still demonstrations. You got to remember the period of time. This was chaos. Under the law, it is a felony, a serious crime. You're not allowed to demonstrate in front of a federal judge's residence. And the Biden administration let this happen. These were like thousands of demonstrators. The justices needed 24-hour security. I don't think they lived in their homes even. They had to be protected 24/7 by U.S. Marshals, probably in bulletproof cars. And there was a serious attempt on Justice Kavanaugh's life. So I think this was a horrific time in Justice Barrett's life, and particularly as it affected her personally and affected her children and her relationship to her children. And I think this left a lasting impression upon her, so that thereafter she was not going to make any controversial decisions that put her or her family at risk again. Period, period, period. She's a mother. Children always come first. The job second. So I don't think she's qualified anymore to be on the Supreme Court for this reason. And she hasn't. In recent decisions in particular, she was been the deciding vote on 2 very controversial decisions. The deciding vote. The first one was birthright citizenship. And she was on the side, it was a 5-4 decision, essentially, where she decided that it's okay for any woman to come into the United States, legally or illegally, just to come in here and have a kid, and the kid automatically becomes a U.S. citizen. No normal country has birthright citizenship. No European country has it. But in her decision, she voted to allow this to continue. And it's going to continue that way. This is a horrible, terrible decision. Justice Thomas wrote a 100-page dissent saying how terrible the decision was, more than 100 pages, and, or less than 100, whatever, it was very long. The point being, now we're stuck with it. She also wrote the decision on election law allowing absentee ballots to come in after the election is over based upon the state's election rule. In this case, it involved Mississippi, which said, hey, it can come in 5 days later. So she wrote the opinion, and it was the deciding vote. So that means we no longer have an election day. We may have an election week, an election month, and no normal country has this. Just to give you an idea, India just held an election with 650 million people voted, and they had the results the next day. So she voted and wrote the decision to say it's okay for these ballots to come in by mail. Everybody trusts the mail now. Just to mosey on in X amount of days later. And what this does is it detracts from voters having confidence in the voting system, believing that the voting system can be corrupted, that people can cheat. So, this was a rushed decision by President Trump. She fooled him. She didn't fool me, because I knew she was from academia. 15 years in academia. Not reality-based. This is the dream world of ideas. And I don't think she ever had any trial experience. So we're stuck with Justice Barrett. I have no personal animus against her. I just think she doesn't belong in the Supreme Court. The problem is you can't get rid of her. The only way she goes if she resigns or she dies. It's a job for life, and no Supreme Court justice has ever been impeached and removed. And again, she voted to keep birthright citizenship, and she voted to keep ballots coming on after Election Day. We no longer have an Election Day. Two terrible, horrible decisions. Because it is my opinion that she didn't want to make a controversy, be on the side of controversy to put her and her children at risk. She didn't want to be in a situation where she'd have to have a bulletproof vest again. Imagine having to explain that to your kids. I don't know how she stays on the Supreme Court anymore and still raises her children. In conclusion, she presented to President Trump one side of her character, but she failed to show him the whole picture. Again, I have no animus towards her. But I would have never picked her for the Supreme Court. Now look, we all make judgments about people, and sometimes they really disappoint us. And sometimes we really get it wrong about people. Justice Barrett has genuinely disappointed many people, including me, and I'm sure President Trump. And she's been on the deciding vote of really bad decisions. She's an academic through and through, mother of 7 children, and it just hasn't worked out. Now, just to reiterate who I am for my podcast, this is Conversations with Dr. S. the Legend, and if you want to contact me, you contact me at drsthelegends, one word, at gmail.com. Let me know what you think about Justice Barrett. Now, as you can also see, I've got some painting or two behind me. These can also be, by the way, this is my email, and we reverse it. Look at that. And this is the website you can go to view all the beautiful Western rodeo cowboy paintings. Finally, this is Dr. S. the Legend signing off.